Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We are just about to get started. We're letting a few more people come in. But while we wait, I'd love for you to familiarize yourself with the chat box. While we have today's presentation going, you'll be able to write in your questions. Now, that chat box looks like a little speech bubble with a little question mark on it. Feel free to click that, add a little text, maybe say good morning in your language or languages, and try it out. The other thing is, I'm sure you're all logging in from all kinds of different devices with different internet browsers. If at any moment you get disconnected during our broadcast, you can simply refresh your browser and log back in. And if you're unable to log back in, no worries, we've got you covered. You'll be getting a video recording of this presentation within 24 hours as well. Oh, I see people writing in good morning. Good morning, bom dia. Oh, we have a Portuguese speaker. Awesome. Buongiorno dall'Italia. Wow, we have somebody joining us from Italy. That's amazing. I am in New Hampshire as well. Go ahead.
I'm in East Tennessee, and I wanted to say 早上好. That's good morning in Chinese.
Oh, good morning. Thank you. Oh, we have St. Louis, Missouri, Wisconsin. Ni hao. Yes.
Ni
That is
hao.
hello, correct?
Yep,
Oh,
exactly. Ni
wonderful.
hao.
Oh, we have a buenos dias as well. This is great. Oh, guten Morgen. I am so sorry if I mispronounced that, but that's German, correct?
I think so. My husband speaks German, so I hear that.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. This is great. We've got a really good crowd. So just in case you're just joining us, I just want to repeat, um, you can use the chat box that is at speech bubble with a little question mark to write in your questions throughout the presentation. We will have time at the end of the presentation to go through your questions. So no worries, we'll cover that. You're also logging in, I'm sure, from a lot of different devices, a lot of different internet browsers. If for some reason you get disconnected during our presentation, just refresh your browser and log back in. And if you're unable to log back in, no worries. We will send you a video recording of today's session within 24 hours, so you won't miss a thing. And we have a few more people trying out that text box. We have Salom or Shalom from Tajikistan. That's amazing. Florida's in the house. Canada. Awesome. This is great. So awesome to see all of you joining us. Okay, so let's begin. We'll let a few more people trickle in, but we are ready to get started. So my name is Priscilla Colon. I'm the School and Faculty Engagement Manager for Transparent Language. I help familiarize those folks who are interested in trying transparent language online with our tools, our suite of tools that has amazing language materials. But today I have the pleasure of having a wonderful guest speaker and educator with us. So I'll have her introduce herself and take it from there. So here's Lei for you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Hi, everyone. My name is Lei Zeng. Zeng is my last name. I am a project manager on the content team at Transparent Language. Before joining Transparent Language, I taught Mandarin Chinese for more than 10 years to government employees and military linguists. And those are people who need to use Chinese for their future work. That's why they receive full-time intensive language training. And then when I was teaching, I saw like amazing transformations in my students from when they had zero background in Mandarin Chinese to when they were able to do presentations or conduct discussions and read newspaper articles or even opinion pieces. So during that process, I also gained some experience in helping them to reach their goals. So right now, part of my job is to make Mandarin Chinese learning more accessible to everyone, and everyone can learn Chinese well. And that's why we are having this webinar today. So in this webinar, we will talk about myths of learning Chinese, and I will give you my take on those myths. And then we'll also go through the basic building blocks of learning both speaking and reading Chinese. And at the end, I will show you a study guide for Mandarin Chinese, which is called 30 by 30. That means if you take 30 minutes per day for 30 days, where will that take you in your Chinese studies? All right, let's dive in. So, the myth. Chinese is one of the hardest languages in the world. Let's talk about the speaking first. Well, my take is that this is not a wrong statement. So in speaking, we think speaking is hard because Chinese is a tonal language. It has tones, which result in a lot of homophones. So homophones are words with similar or even the same pronunciation, but very different meanings. Let's see some examples here. So you will see that there are 5 words listed in with their pronunciation, their pinyin syllables in the middle column, and their Chinese characters on the left side, and their English meanings on the right side. So you will see that the Chinese characters look very different, and so do the English meanings. And, however, all of the pinyin syllables, the spelling is the same, which is Y-O-U, Y-U. A couple of them have different tones, but look at these two. They even have the exact same tone marks. Well, let me pronounce them for you to take a listen. The first one is 忧郁, 忧郁. The second one, 犹豫, 犹豫. The third one, 鱿鱼. The fourth one is also 鱿鱼. And the last one is 有鱼. Those are the 5 words. So as you saw and heard, while their pronunciations are very similar, their meanings are vastly different. So I would understand a new learner's natural concern would be, well, how am I going to get this right? Well, there is a systematic way to learn your Chinese pronunciation with ample guidance so that your pronunciation accuracy is up there from the get-go. So it is hard, but there is a way, and we will cover that later in our webinar. That said, once you get past the pronunciation phase and start saying sentences, you will realize that Chinese grammar is much more straightforward and much easier than, say, Spanish and French. So here is an example. Now, here's the conjugation of the French verb aller, or to go. How many tenses and how many conjugations are there in the screenshot? And this is not even complete. I was able to get a partial screenshot and there were more at the bottom. What about the Chinese side? Well, you need to know the word 去, which means to go, and that's it. With 去, you can express where you went yesterday, where you're going tomorrow, or you wanted to go somewhere but didn't. So Chinese grammar has no conjugation, no tenses. That's the first good piece of news. The tenses are reflected in the time word and the pattern you use in your sentence. In addition, not like French, there is no gender differences in speaking Chinese. Well, on the other hand, like I mentioned before, there are a lot of grammar patterns, which also means if you know the grammar patterns, you will be able to pick up the patterns and talk and make conversations. So, all right, back to the myth. Chinese is one of the hardest languages in the world. Well, we talked about speaking briefly. What about reading all those characters? My take is that it's also not a wrong statement. Reading is hard because of all of those characters. And mainly because they just look so different from the alphabetic systems that we are familiar with. Now, look at the characters on the left side, in the left column here, and their English meanings in the right column. They're just so different that it's pretty much impossible to establish a connection with how the characters look and what they mean. Now, on the other hand, characters are also highly logical on their own. So if I put the icons of what these characters represent right next to them, do you see any resemblance between the icons and the characters themselves? Does the moon character look like the real moon? Does the mountain character look like a mountain with a summit on top? Does the rain character look like raindrops covered by a cloud? So if you can see any resemblance here, and that is the logic that connects the character and its meaning, and that is where we will start to learn Chinese characters. So back again to my point. Yes, it is hard, but there is also a way. Now, let's take a look at the building blocks of learning Chinese. We will talk about learning Pinyin for Chinese pronunciation and also learning radicals for learning Chinese characters. All right, so about Pinyin. What is Pinyin? You heard me mentioning Pinyin syllables, Pinyin spelling when I was giving those 5 examples. Now, Pinyin is a romanization system for representing the sounds of Mandarin Chinese using the Latin alphabet, so something we're familiar with. Hence, a pronunciation aid for Chinese learners. Now, if you look at a typical Chinese beginner's textbook, you will find Pinyin listed in between the characters and their English meaning. So those are the Pinyin syllables in the purple rectangular. However, just a brief history on Pinyin, it didn't exist until the 1950s. It was invented by the Chinese government to improve literacy rates within China. So note that the original audience wasn't even foreigners learning Chinese as a second language, but native speakers. Well, the reason is that for thousands of years, the only way to learn Chinese characters is rote memorization, which means you go to school, if you could afford it in the first place, and read out loud those ancient classics hundreds of times, led by your teacher, and then eventually you will memorize how to pronounce the characters. So that's part of the reason why literacy rate was very low back then. But after Pinyin was invented, people finally could establish a connection between the words they say every day and how they look. And naturally, it simplifies the process of learning Chinese pronunciation for non-native speakers. So it's a very important learning tool. In addition to serving as a learning aid, Pinyin is also an important tool for Chinese speakers in their daily lives, primarily because this is how we used to type. So look at the screenshot of the text message exchanges between me and my friend. And this is what I will do when I type up a message. I type Pinyin in the blank space here, and I choose the characters I want to down here. In this case, it's the first 2 characters, and then I hit send. So that will be my text message. That's how we communicate. So that is why Pinyin is very important for both Chinese learners and Chinese speakers. So what is the composition of the Pinyin syllable? Now here's an example for you. So this is pronounced as hao, hao. And you may find that familiar because this is part of how we say hello. Ni hao is a 2-syllable phrase. Ni means you, and hao means good. So literally, you good is how we say hello. In this syllable, we have an initial, which is the consonant, that's the H here, and a final, that is the vowel, or it can be a vowel with a nasal consonant, and also most importantly, a tone. So this one has a third tone, hao. Now, a syllable can have no initials, but must have a final and a tone. For example, the syllable it doesn't have an initial or the consonant, but it only has the vowel or the final with a fourth tone. So I can mean hungry. Is the syllable. So that's how a pinyin syllable looks like. Now, a common complaint I hear is that, well, the tones are so hard. Yes, that's true. Chinese has 4 tones plus a neutral tone, so which technically it makes it 5 tones in total. But Cantonese and Vietnamese each has 9 tones in total. So count yourselves lucky because you only need to learn 5. Well, jokes aside, now pronouncing tones accurately is of course very important. And people do feel that they are hard if the tones are not introduced properly. So first of all, let me show you how to pronounce those tones. Now here are the 5 tones with the highest frequency syllable, M-A. The first tone is also called a high tone. So it's high, it's short and straight. Ma, ma, which can mean mother. And the second tone, it goes up. So it's also called a rising tone. Ma, ma, it can mean hip. The third tone, it goes deep, it dips down and then it goes back up. So it's also called a low tone because it goes quite low at the bottom. So ma, ma, it can mean horse. And the fourth tone, it goes straight down. And so it's also called a falling tone. It pronounces as ma, ma, which can mean to scold. And the neutral tone is just a really light drop, ma, ma. It can be a question particle you put at the end of a statement, and this turns the statement into a yes or no question. So those are some examples and how to pronounce the 5 tones. And naturally, so in this case, when we're talking to someone, I'm sure you don't want to say horse by accident when you're really addressing your mom, right? That said, are tones the only way for you to understand what someone is saying? No, there is also context. So Chinese is a highly contextual language. So you will be able to get a hint of which word the person is saying and what it means. And if you don't get it, that also happens to a lot of native speakers too, because people do have accents or we don't know the background. You just ask a follow-up question. So which word are you talking about? However, you do need a high level of tones accuracy if you aim high in your language learning. So for example, if you want to take a test and your goal is quite high up there, so you want to be able to make speeches, you want to be able to make fluent conversations, then your tones and your conversation is an important benchmark to see if you are at the level or not. Well, now you will say, okay, so we understand the importance of tones and I want to be good. Where do I start? Unfortunately, traditional tones instructions make it harder. Why do I say so? Well, you will learn these 5 syllables, ma, 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 at the very beginning. And then you will learn all the syllables, which is 416 of them, with different tones all together in isolation. So go ahead, repeat after your teacher or the recording without knowing what you're really saying. And then good luck, you're on your own. A better practiced and tested way takes 3 steps. So the first step is you learn all the syllables in the first tone, in the high tone. Why the first tone? Because it is the easiest among the 5. It's high, it's short, and it doesn't variate, so people rarely get the first tone wrong. So the purpose is to get your muscle practice in, to get familiar with, especially for those syllables that don't exist in English or your native language. So you will get muscle practice in. You will practice where to put your lips and your tongue by using the easiest tone. And then you move to the second step, which is to learn individual tones in contrast groups. So there are 2 groups, the first tone with the third tone and the second tone with the fourth tone. Why is that? Because there is a big difference between the 2 tones in the group. So first and the third, ma, ma, jia, jia, yi, yi, high, low, high, low. So you hear the difference easily. And once you train your ears to hear the tones, then it's easier for you to pronounce the tones. The same goes with the second and the fourth tone. So it goes up and down, like ma, ma, guo, guo, li, li. So they're so different, you will be able to catch the difference. And once you're familiar with the individual tones, then you will learn tones combinations, because tones are rarely, almost never said in isolation. We say 2-syllable, 3-syllable, 4-syllable words. We say phrases, we say sentences. So a tone is almost always preceded or followed by another tone. So once you practice tones in combination groups, then you can learn how one tone behaves when it's followed by another tone. And also along the way, you also pick up some high frequency vocabulary items, which you can pick up and use in your next stage of learning speaking Chinese. So, and that is how I designed the Pinyin course and the tones course to bring you into the door of speaking Chinese. And after taking these 2 courses, you will know how to pronounce all 416 syllables in Pinyin, and you will know how tones behave when combined with other tones, and you will also have learned some frequently used words in those tones combinations. Next, you are ready to take these and move on to conversation and grammar studies. All right, so that's the building block for learning Chinese speaking. Now, let's talk about characters. We want to learn characters. They bring you Chinese culture, they show you how Chinese people think, and they're just fun to decipher, especially for visual learners. Among my past students, I would say the majority of them are visual learners, and they usually have fun with Chinese characters. However, a common complaint about learning characters, there are so many. Well, let's take a look. It's true. There are in total over 50,000 Chinese characters. That's the big pie over here. But the vast majority in the big pie are not active. You won't see them. Well, in the smaller slices over here, you will need 2,000 to 3,000 characters to read newspapers. That's how many characters I need as a native speaker to read my newspapers or the magazines I like. And also further down, The most basic daily life conversations consist of around 700 characters. By basic conversations, I mean topics including talking about your daily schedules and your weekend plans, or going out to a restaurant, ordering food and talking about how bad traffic is. Or you go shopping for clothing, you ask for different size, and or you are making traveling plan and you book your flight tickets or reserve a hotel room. So altogether, those topics include around 700 characters. So now we see that it's not an infinite number of characters you have to learn, but we can start small and build up from there. Now, how do we do that? How do we start small? We have to learn radicals. What is a radical? So a Chinese character has at least one part, or two, three, or even more parts. Those parts are called components. Those are the components of a character. Now, among those components, there is only one component in each character that assigns the character to a meaning group. So whether a character belongs to the meaning group of trees or wood, of water or people or female or hand. So that's what a radical will tell you. Example, this is the tree / wood radical. So that's the yellow character you see in the center of the image. Let's compare it with the actual image of the tree in the background. So you see that we have the tree branches here. That's the horizontal stroke. And we have the tree trunk going up and down. And we also have the roots of the tree going deep into the ground. So that is an example of the radical. And here is a character with the tree radical. And I put an image of this character means table. I put the image of table here just for visual aid. So the tree radical is at the bottom of this character. That looks a bit squashed. So that's always how a tree radical will look like when it is at the bottom of a character. At this point, if I'm teaching this character in my class, then I will throw a question to my student. Okay, so you know the tree radical assigns the meaning group for this character. It belongs to wood. The table is made out of wood. Next, how do you make the connection between the shape of the character and the meaning of the table? So one student would say, well, I see the tree radical at the bottom, and it also resembles the legs at the bottom of the table. And I see a flat surface here. It looks like a flat surface of some sort, and there's some stuff on the flat surface. So you put stuff on the flat surface of a table. So that's how tables work. There you go. That student just made the jump by using the radical as the bridge between a character's shape and its meaning. So that's how that person interpreted the table character, and that worked. Now, second example. So this is a chair character, and we have the image of a chair right there as visual aid. In the chair character, the tree radical appears on the left side, and it's a skinny version. The tree radical is always skinny when it's on the left side of a character. Same question. So how would you make the connection between the shape of the character? There's still stuff going on the right side, and the chair, and the image of a chair. So one student would say, so chair is made out of wood, so the radical makes sense. And on the right side, I see a flat surface in the middle here with the horizontal stroke. So imagine it's a flat surface with some support down here. And on top, it looks like a person sitting on the flat surface or a chair in this case, looking relaxed. Well, congratulations, that student just made the connection between the shape of the character and its meaning, a chair. Last example. So this is the character for bridge. Now let's also need to bear in mind that when those characters were created hundreds or even thousands of years ago, there were no fancy construction materials like concrete or steel for us to build a bridge. So back then, in ancient times, a bridge um, was probably made out of a tree trunk, just from one side of the river to the other. So that's why there's a tree radical on the left side of the character, and it's also the skinny version. Now, okay, same question. How do you make the connection? Uh, so one student says, well, I see that the entire right side of the character, like some sort of structure, maybe a pavilion on the other side of the bridge. So a person needs to go across the bridge to reach that pavilion on the other side. It works. And another student says, well, I see some movements down here. It looks like a person's legs. So that person is going across the bridge to wherever he needs to go on the other side of the river. So both versions worked. And in this case, truly, there is no wrong answers because this is the logic embedded in each character. And you are the person to make sense of the logic by using the radical as a tool. So what I'm trying to teach here is the thought process. And once you get used to the thought process of using that logic, apply the logic to the characters you see, you will get a lot more comfortable and then enjoy the process. So the natural progression would be, we learn 40 at the very beginning of learning Chinese characters. You will learn 40 to 50 high frequency radicals, including the tree radical. So congratulations, you just learned your first Chinese radical today. And then also include person, water, female, hen radicals, and then their meaning, how they look like. So you will practice those radicals, the frequently used characters, including me, I, you, river, bright. So those are also the characters you see in your daily life, in your daily conversations as well. And after that, you will move on to compound words. So including we, tomorrow, US, China. And eventually, you start from reading short phrases like hello, I'm home, see you tomorrow, and expand from there. So your vocabulary will become bigger and your sentence will become longer as well. All right, so that was the building block of learning how to read Chinese characters. And if you want to apply what we talked about in the webinar, so this is the 3 courses I designed by using the exact method or the logic, so to take you into the door of learning Chinese. So those are the Pinyin course, the tones course, and the radicals course. And if you decide to take those 3 courses, here is a study guide that I designed for you, which is called 30 by 30 study guide. So you spend 30 minutes per day for 30 days. And here is a sneak peek of your first 7 days. Now, note that I don't just tell you to go, go, go. There is also rest day and review where you can catch up with what you missed during the week, or you review something that you feel extremely hard. And then just go ahead and download the study guide and put it on your fridge. I love like putting workout challenges or race training plans in my fridge and then check those that I have finished. And by the end, it always gives me a great sense of accomplishment. So I hope this will help you too. All right, back to you, Priscilla.
Thank you so much, Lay. First, I have to say, I have to admit, I've been one of those people who was intimidated by Chinese. It's so different from all of the languages that I've worked with in the past. But even just going through something as basic as the tones course that you put together, the radicals course, I actually didn't feel as intimidated anymore, especially the way you laid out the tones that were very like the opposite of each other. I started picking up on the differences. The other thing that I noticed is as I started learning those radicals, right, wood or mouse or food, I actually started seeing them in my everyday life in the back of cars, on Chinese storefronts. I started picking up on them. So I can't recommend these courses and this guide enough to all of you. And I come from a Romance language background. I have no background in other languages. So this really works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm putting the link to the guide. So you'll see it come up in your chat. You can click on that. You only see a little sneak peek here, but you can click on that link that I've put in the chat. It will take you to our 30 by 30 challenge. You can download the guide. You can start a free trial so you can follow the guide and look at all of the courses that we recommend. And once you finish that first 30 days, you can move on to the rest of our courses. We have more than 400 hours of Chinese courses, taking you from an A1 to a C2 on the SEFR scale. That's a common European framework. So from beginner all the way to advanced. What if you want to study a specific domain or topic? We have business Chinese, medical Chinese, travel essentials, current events so that you can keep up with the news, get to those 2,000 or 3,000 characters that Lei mentioned as well. So that's what we have for you today. There are a couple of questions that came up during this presentation. Um, if you wouldn't mind, Lei, we have one really cool question. When
Not at
you
all.
when you were talking about the radicals, you mentioned the wood radical, and the question was, when you're talking about modern day, let's say a table that is made out of glass or plastic, does that wood radical change?
That's a very good question. So I think it's a good thing that it doesn't change. So a table character always has a wood radical. So it doesn't matter if your table is made out of other materials or has a glass top. The character itself always goes by the form, the original form that it's set in. So that will be helpful. Like once you know it's the table character with a tree radical, and that's it. There's no other variations.
Oh, that's awesome. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm poking at it a little bit. What if you want to say like plastic table or plastic chair or something like
Yeah.
that?
Well,
What
then
happens?
you will learn the word plastic and then put that word in front of your table. So that will be your plastic table. And that's also how it's written.
Oh, awesome. So it's like adding an adjective to your
Yes.
noun. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah,
very nice.
so that's another thing. Grammar is straightforward and is really a lot of the grammar patterns is similar to how English works. So,
Very nice. There was also a question which I think I've helped to answer, but maybe it would be nice to discuss here, which is we have an advanced speaker and writer of Japanese, and she was wondering how that might help as she starts her journey with Mandarin Chinese. I mentioned that Japanese is not a tonal language, so um, going through your tips on how to learn tones for Chinese would be very useful. But if maybe there's something else you might want to add.
yes. So in my experience, Japanese speakers are faster at learning Chinese, especially characters, because you have the kanji, and you also have a set of Chinese characters you do use in Japanese. And it's East Asian language group, Korean speakers, Japanese speakers. It's easier for them to hear. Some, if I correct me if I'm wrong, some of the pronunciations of Japanese words or Korean words are similar to the pronunciation of Chinese words. So those language speakers also have a natural advantage in learning Chinese. So it's for them, it will be faster. Um, However, yeah, Priscilla was correct in that Japanese is not a tonal language. So taking the tones course goes through those. You still need to go through those muscle practice to get the correct position in pronouncing those syllables, and especially the tones. Uh, so those are two very helpful courses if you want to jumpstart in learning your Chinese. And then the radicals course, that will help you just familiarize yourself, but you may see a lot of content familiar already, and then that just means that you will move through the course faster and you are going to be ready to your next stage earlier.
That's great. So for you Japanese speakers, learners out there, you've got a leg up on this already in many
Yeah.
ways. Very nice. I do have one more question that just came in. Let me see. Is the logic connection for the characters, is it valid for every single character?
That's a very good question. The short answer is no. Because, well, that reminds me of something, a conversation I caught. So I was stepping back into the classroom, and my students were exchanging their experience of how to learn Chinese characters. And one student was saying, well, sometimes I just stare at one character for 10 minutes and see if we can be friends. I laughed at that because he is absolutely right. So there are characters like that when um, the radicals don't help as much. The reason is because those characters, the original form was created hundreds or thousands of years ago, and then through all these years of evolution, a lot of them have changed shapes, and some of them have lost their original meaning. That's why, in those cases, just by learning those radicals might not as helpful as the straightforward example that we just saw. However, learning radicals and learning the logic, the thought process will help you establish your own way of interpreting um, the characters. Like a student, he was talking about the character for part of course, and then he saw that this one just looks like a tilted birthday cake, and that helped him with no aid of radical in the character. So once you get through the radicals course, once you get the sense of how Chinese characters work, the logic, then that process will become smoother. And also, if you read characters, when you expand from words to phrases, also everything will help you, the grammar structure um, and the combination of words. So everything will come together to help you acquire those harder characters.
And thank you so much for mentioning that, especially the stylized characters, how as the years have progressed, the characters themselves become more stylized, so you still have to learn, right, those Chinese characters.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So characters never show up in isolation, rarely shows up in
Mm,
isolation. So we also need to learn together in compound words, and that also helps. So
that's great. Let me see. We've got another question came in. Um, are these classes or courses recommended for a prior Chinese language learner? I studied simplified Mandarin for 8 years from 1999 through 2007, but I am very rusty.
mm. Yes, so those are very good for going back to the basics because in those courses, nothing is missed. We teach everything you need to learn in those fundamental elements. So it covers all the pinyin syllables, and some of the syllables are fast. So we don't have special practice. You follow the pronunciation because it's similar to English and probably something you can already do without any difficulty. However, those syllables with hard um, syllables, which means those don't exist in English, we have special instruction videos to tell you where to put everything and how to make those sounds. So by going through those lessons and practices, it will refresh your memory, um, and then it will bring back all the fundamentals. So build back up the foundations you used to have before, so that you will be able to move on to the next stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't agree more. Even learning other languages where I have not practiced in a long time, it really is about building that muscle memory, relearning where to place the tongue, where to blow the air out, and all of that. And we can always use more practice, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. That's me and my French.
That's what I was thinking about, my French too.
Yeah.
Uh, I have another question. Are the radicals the same for traditional and simplified Chinese?
Hmm. That's a very good question. Some radicals are different. So, but my experience is that once you learn one group of radicals, usually people feel that, like, our course teaches simplified Chinese characters. Once you know those simplified characters and the radicals, it's easier for you to move on, just to add on those radicals or even characters that are different from simplified Chinese. So, so I would recommend learning one set first, and then um, just add on to those different if you want to along the way. And then, so for me, um, I'm a native speaker, of course, but I never learned traditional Chinese characters. But once I saw those, I'll know that, okay, this looks similar to this simplified Chinese character, and then they just there are just more strokes. So yeah, if you get the simplified characters down first, then it'll be easier for you to learn the traditional format. Unless you're on an urgent timeline, you learn two things at the same time. If you're not, if you're learning at your own pace, then definitely one thing first and then move on to another.
And to add on Transparent Language Online, you can get courses in both simplified Chinese and traditional as well. So you can learn both, or you can start with one and then build on with the second. Um, okay, another question. These are great. When studying Chinese, how much time is useful to spend on pinyin and how much on characters to be fluent in conversation as early as possible?
Okay, great question. So on Pinyin, I think the Pinyin course that we have is plenty. So if it's a full-time intensive training, Pinyin only consists of 5 or 6 hours in total, because what's necessary is to learn how to pronounce those syllables. That's a must that you need to learn at the beginning. There are like I say there's only 416 syllables, and after you know the syllables, you will be able to read out loud words and sentences if you see pinyin on top of the characters. So you have to learn how to pronounce every single syllable. There's no shortcut from that. So that in total will be 5 or 6 hours, which is about the length of our Pinyin course. And then after that, it depends on your goal. do you want to be better? Do you only want to be conversational, or do you also want to be able to read? So if you want both, then what I usually recommend is that if you use a textbook, our Chinese for Professionals course, for example, I would suggest that students to um, take away the pinyin from Unit 5. So from Unit 1 through 4, you can read the characters along with the pinyin on top. But starting from Unit 5, well, you learn how to pronounce the words by using the pinyin as a learning aid. But after that, when you try to read the conversations, then you try to leave the pinyin out. So you only focus on the characters. That will take longer for you to go through one lesson for sure, because you're learning speaking and reading at the same time. Um, but if that's your goal, then I recommend doing that starting from Unit 5 of your Chinese textbook.
Awesome. Okay. I believe that's all of the questions for now. If for some reason we haven't gotten to your question, we will email you with a response after this session. But thank you so much for being an amazing audience, for asking so many cool questions, for tuning in from all over the world. We were so excited to bring you this. I hope you got a lot out of this session. Amazing tips. Make sure that you download that guide and start going through the courses. You will find them super helpful. And of course, you can always email us with additional questions. Maybe you need some more help on your Chinese learning path. I know that Lei would always be happy to answer those questions. So thank you again. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.